Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Jiva Live. We have a great show for you today. We have three awesome guests, and highlighting that show today is the head coach at Princeton University, Sam Shweisky, and one of his former players and currently training with the national team, professional players overseas, Cody Kessel. And also with us is our junior director of the Jiva region, Bill Doyle. Gentlemen, thank you for coming. I appreciate your time this evening. The idea that we want to dive into today, and we headlined this evening with the idea of promoting positive masculinity. And that's something in a culture that I know Sam pushes in his gym hard, and Cody, lived under that roof for quite a few years while at Princeton University. But before we dive into that, I want to give Sam a little bit of time to go back and reminisce on his roots. Sam, I know you spent a little bit of time in New York City. As in the Jiva region, you're still here today. You spent a little time at Vassar, and just kind of going back to your roots. Anything that during that early time period of your your young player career that you remember as part of a really cool experience in the Jiva region, or something you really hold on to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first I want to thank you for doing this and for giving us the opportunity to give back a little bit. Yeah, I grew up in New York City and I played volleyball there. And I played for Warren Sixpack, so for Jiva. And but then I started playing with the Empire State Games. I played New York City Scholastic 94, 95, 96, and then I played for the Hudson Valley men's team in around the late 90s, 2000s when I was up at Vassar. And Empire State Games was just such an incredible environment. I mean, you had these 6 regions, you had men, women, boys and girls, you had all these different sports, but the volleyball community was just such a special thing to see. You'd see City Open, if guys know the names, Mike Salick or Kyle Robinson. I mean, I was a young kid watching those guys play, and they really kind of took us under their wing. And it was just such an awesome experience. And so Empire State Games for me, certainly growing up in the Jiva region, was a really special thing. And it gave me the idea that volleyball was a community and that people looked out for each other. And if you had information, you wanted to share it. If there was a young guy or girl, someone that really loved the sport, they wanted to sort of cultivate that. And it definitely, guys like Merlin Thompson and some of those early coaches that I had put that idea into me that, this was going to be something that could be a lifelong pursuit, if not a profession, certainly a pursuit. So definitely love those days. It's a bummer that the Empire State Games aren't around right now. But yeah, Jiva is just holds a real special place in my heart. And I love the people that I worked with. I coached for Doug Levine for many years for New York City Juniors. And it's just a lot of good people, Coach Doyle here as well, that are in the region that are doing really good things. So any chance to give back and say thank you, I'm happy to do it.
No, definitely. Thank you very much. And we appreciate your time here in the Jiva region without a doubt. And looking forward to many conversations, including this one. So Cody, you got a chance to play under Sam. You may even get a chance to do so again. I'm just curious on, when you first met him, when you were going through that recruiting process, more towards the culture of the program, that he was promoting. And, we talked a little bit about last week about the idea of positive masculinity. And, how did you first see that when you stepped on campus and with Coach?
Yeah, the recruiting was, I kind of slipped under the radar a bit, and kind of, not that I snuck in there, but I was definitely kind of an undersized kid from Colorado who really didn't have the level yet to play Division I, but he took a chance to have me come on an unofficial visit. And after that, I had 6 or 7 months more of playing, and I managed to impress one of the players at the open gym enough, Vinny Tuminelli, another East Coast Jiva guy. And yeah, it's kind of just funny looking back about how it all started. But as far as the program goes, I think the thing that sticks out in my mind the most is there was this truly holistic approach, and Coach just wanted to make sure that everyone who came through the program would leave as a better man and person because of the volleyball experience. And so there were a lot of little things that went into that, as small as, getting into daily habits where if there was an email sent out, everyone had to reply with something, a got it, anything to get you kind of ready for the workforce when you know, because I think I'm, besides a couple other players, I'm the only one to go on to play professionally. The rest of these guys are off to Wall Street and off to amazing consulting things and doing other awesome stuff in the world. And so, you know, there was, besides just the volleyball, I think so many people learn just other life skills from coach, and not just the email. I'm just using that as a small daily example, but what it meant to, you know, be a healthy member of a team and society. So.
No, I appreciate it. So Sam, getting along the same line. So I want to talk about two things that Cody mentioned there. Number one, there are some great players on the boys' side that become great men's players. So, you know, speak a little bit about that, but then let's talk about a little bit, you know, what is your exact definition of positive masculinity?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just quickly, to tie up the recruiting side of things, Cody told the story through his eyes, which is basically how I remember it. Except I remember going to JO's my second year at Princeton, and I had known John Kessel for about a decade. One of their cousins, John Shweisky, who actually just spoke to recently on a Vassar Volleyball reunion call, I was going out to Colorado Springs 2003, and I was really just getting into coaching volleyball, and Shweisky had said, "Oh, my cousin John Kessel is," I was like, "Yeah, I know who John Kessel is. Like, I've heard the name, obviously." He said, "Oh, you should network with him and talk to him." And so I met John Kessel in 2003. And then the next sort of 8 or 9 years, every time I would see him at a clinic, he would sit me down and just throw information at me. And I would just try to take as much as I could. So we had that relationship for about close to a decade. And I walk into JO's and I see him with his big camera and he's taking pictures of his son. He goes, "Oh, you got to come look at my son." I'm like, "Okay, I'll come look at your son." And I came watched and I'm like, "Wait, who am I looking at? Like, which one?" And actually Doug Beal's son was on the team at the time, if I recall correctly. But he's like, "That's my son." And I'm like, "Oh, I've only been here 2 years, but I don't think that's going to work for us. Like, I don't think that, I don't think he has the skill ability, the coordination. He wasn't physical. Like, he checked none of the boxes from a physical standpoint." And I was politely told John, like, "Yeah, good to see you, but I got to go look at some other courts." And yeah, Cody like kept sending emails and then took a gap year and wanted to come on a visit. So we had him come on a visit and he just kept growing physically. And then by the time he came to campus, he was another few inches taller and obviously became the physical specimen that everyone has seen him today. But if I trace it back, and I use this when I recruit now, God, he loved and loves volleyball. And like, that is, you know, and coaches, when they pitch their kid, like, "Oh, my kid loves volleyball," they say that word pretty flippantly. And it's like, no, if this kid really is like peppering against the wall, if this kid heard that Bob Stavertlik like practiced ways to stretch, we could have a better platform, and was, "Oh my God, I want to do that." That's the kind of kid you want in your gym. And so that was the lesson that I took from Cody. Like, people always say, "Wow, it was brilliant that you recruited him." It's like, I didn't know he was going to touch 12 feet and, you know, do the physical things that he ended up doing. If I would, then I'd be a savant and I'd be in Vegas, you know, running the numbers. But if you pick someone that has like a love for the game, is a genuinely good person, if you know their family, if you know the parents and they're good people, like, you're on the right track, you know? So that was how that happened. But yeah, positive masculinity or healthy masculinity. So I got to Princeton in 2010 and I've been coaching women's volleyball for about a decade. And I was my first time really coaching men at a high level. And I didn't, you know, there was some language stuff that I wasn't comfortable with, but I didn't really have an academic vernacular to say like why you shouldn't say that. I knew it wasn't right. It wasn't good. And I got connected with this program at Princeton called Maverick, which stands for Men's Allied Voices for Respectful and Inclusive Community. Kind of a long thing there, but really it's across a lot of college campuses, but it's a lot of it geared toward reducing sexual assault on college campuses, which is a pretty heavy thing, and it's a pretty big deal. And instead of giving women self-defense classes it says, "Hey, let's work on the culture in fraternities, in sports teams, and in male environments, where if you can sort of help some of the thought process, you can maybe sort of mitigate some of these things that are going on across all college campuses." So I got into that, started going to some meetings, and, you know, and Cody was there sort of in the early years. I remember we went to a meeting once, or a presentation, and me, Cody, and one of his teammates, who I'll leave nameless, but he's going to know who it was. The three of us were walking back. Actually, I remember it vividly. We went and they had a bunch of food. The three of us went back to the Dillon Tower to have some extra food, and got into a heated debate about the validity of the presentation. And Cody was like, yeah, this all makes a lot of sense to me. And this other player was like, none of it makes sense to me. But it started me down a journey of listening to some of these podcasts and some of these things that I then took into a lot of the coaching. And so, starting with language, like my mom, since I was a kid, told me not to swear 4-letter words just because it's not educated or polite. But when you're an adult and you tell a kid don't do that, you don't give them any reason behind it. Sometimes it loses its meaning. And so it wasn't so much about swearing. It was about the words that were homophobic or misogynistic or anti-woman that starts to really, pivot your brain in sort of a negative way that you start to internalize. And so even things like, it's 13 all in the fifth and there's a timeout and you hear a teammate go, dude, come on, man up, let's go. And he's trying to be supportive. He's trying to be encouraging, but he's genderizing that moment in a way that is toxic and is not helpful. In that moment, you want to say, be courageous, be confident, be aggressive, take a great swing. Those elements have nothing to do with being male or female, right? Like a great male player or female player can do that. Saying man up is hearkening back to be tough, be a man, be strong, don't be a woman, don't be feminine, don't be weak. And it just perpetuates all these things in your head that has nothing to do with volleyball and is really not helpful. And as a matter of fact, it's hurtful. So now when these guys go off into the business world and they have two resumes in front of them, one male and one female, for 20 years, they've been saying things like, man up, be a man. And maybe they pick the male candidate when he's not as qualified. So that was some of the things around language and around like understanding that human beings share a common experience devoid of gender. Human beings get anxious, get sad, get nervous, a whole range of emotions that in a lot of male environments, men are not permitted to have those feelings. Now, this 2020 is a lot different than 2010. I got to say, I think we've made a lot of progress, but I still think there's places where men need to be told it's okay to be nervous. Cody was part of some exercises that we did, and we still do to this day. We sit around the circle and we say, what's your biggest fear? And guys get through the courage to say their biggest fear. And other guys say, hey man, I hear you. I'm afraid of that too. And you build some sort of connection. We do a game, I'm pretty sure Cody was around for, called Love Thy Neighbor, where before a big game, we'll sit in a circle and you'll say to the guy to the right of you, you'll say, man, I really appreciate this about you, or I really am in awe of this about you. And the guy turns back and he goes, thank you. And it's an exercise in giving a compliment, taking a compliment. A lot of men, especially young boys, devalue, no, I didn't play well. Like, hey man, I'm giving you a compliment, take that compliment. So little things like that, I think, add to a culture of positive masculinity. Yeah, we're men, that's the gender we were ascribed, but it's a positive thing. And we can share all the positive traits of both genders, or all genders, I should say. But it's just been something that's grown over time, and I think has been a positive way to say, like, we're a culture of inclusivity. We're a culture of autonomy, and we want guys to respect everyone that's part of our program and take those into the world, right? That's the thing that's going to make you a great person, whether you're playing professional volleyball in Germany or if you're running a Fortune 500 company or whatever you do. Can you be respectful and inclusive and a real good person? That's kind of where it comes down to.
No, Sam, I think that's some great insight. I definitely appreciate that. Definitely in today's coaching world, and Bill and Aaron and Cody last week, we've had some discussions on looking at a person as a person and leaving the other stuff out of it. So Cody, kind of from your side, what changes in just the way you spoke, the way you acted, maybe an experience that you're comfortable in sharing in your transition and into this culture of positive masculinity that kind of changed your mindset on some of these things?
Yeah, I can't come up with any one thing right now, but just overall, you just see it so much in sport and even in that frat culture, the college culture. There's a drinking culture. It's just pervasive, and my teammates and I were many steps ahead of our fellow classmates on a lot of these issues, and we're able to handle them in the social clubs or the classrooms much better from our experiences through the volleyball team. It just gave us, like Sam was saying, kind of a vocabulary and a deeper understanding of people and feelings. You know, sometimes guys aren't so good with that stuff. You kind of just ignore it, especially in sport. You just bottle it up, and you know, the cliche thing was the man box. You know, you got to keep it all bottled up in the man box. But you know, getting out of that and realizing that there's a lot more to the human experience and to life and to the game and everything. So that's just kind of is what has stuck with me and over those 4 years. And I saw a lot of growth. Especially looking back, you know, maybe sure there were guys saying, "Oh, we got to go to this meeting. I don't know about this. This is not really my thing." But for multiple times, but over the 4 years, you just see that growth. And the other thing, I think we mentioned it last time, but it comes from such a genuine place from Coach and from Sam. And so for all the coaches, when you're building your coaching philosophy and you're building, you know, these values and these priorities of what you want to get across, it's got to be genuine, and it's got to come from what you truly believe and how you go about the world and how you think. And if it's not, the kids are going to see straight through it. And with Coach, that was always a real genuine, true, strong thing that you could pick up on. So
cool. Yeah. So Cody, along that line, and Sam and Cody, we can go back and forth on this. When you walk into a gym and you see that culture, that team, that coach for the very first time, have you ever walked into a gym and went, wow, this is a great place to be, this is a great learning environment, or the contrary, wow, this is a negative place to be? And you don't have to tell me the exact place, but like, what feelings do you feel internally? What things do you see on the court going on? How quickly can you pick up that vibe in a gym and that vibe of a culture or a team? So Sam, I'll go with you first if you want.
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back on one or two things Cody mentioned. You know, I think we would do things like, I do an exercise where like the bro hug, you have to clap first before you hug the guy. Especially 10 years ago, men weren't as comfortable just giving each other a hug. And that was something that we tried to do. And as we did little exercises like that, you would then see after a tough loss, or after a guy broke up with his girlfriend or had a bad grade or something, guys would give each other a hug and say, "I care about you, man." Like, and it also opened up opportunities for guys to have permission to ask for help, whether it was going to the McGraw Learning Center on campus, whether it was struggling with mental health, which is a real thing that I think for a long time, especially in male communities, didn't want to address. And so now you have guys, if they have a mental health issue, they're going to go seek the help. You know, the other thing I would say is like, I don't want to make this sound like it's about not swearing and being a goody two shoe. Or you can't ever tell a dirty joke or enjoy life. I was with the women's coach's husband, Abel, a good friend of mine. He was showing me this old house of his. We're down in the basement, and the dryer was going off, and it was making this kind of very funny noise. And he kind of nudged his elbow into me and smiled. And then he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's Maverick." I said, "You're not insulting the laundry machine. Like, that's okay. Like, you don't have to stop being an adult human and enjoy adult humor. You just have to be cognizant of what you're saying and of your own implicit bias and your privilege. And are you putting someone else down? And not, I didn't mean to insult you, but how is that person taking it?" You know, I mean, and this really, Cody, after you left, things expanded with what was going on in the world. But like, you know, we talked about Black Lives Matter, and we had African-American guys on our team give their experience. And that was part of our program to have a family and discuss these things. We talked about the Las Vegas shooting. Like, these things happened, and it was, okay, we're a family. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk about this through the lens of, we care about each other way more than just winning games. And that was super important. On the also, prior to the Me Too movement, some of this was falling on deaf ears. The Me Too movement happened, and it was like, this is a real thing, guys. This is a real thing that's happening across the country, on college campuses, in businesses, in Hollywood, and it needs to be addressed. Understanding your power as a man coming out of Princeton, you're going to have a lot of social power, and you have to kind of understand that. So that's where a lot of that kind of came into. As for walking in and seeing a good program, absolutely. And not to, you know, give too big of a plug, but if you've ever been a chance to be around Alan Knipe or be around the Long Beach State program in the last couple of years, it's unbelievable. Nick McCray, one of his longtime assistants I've worked with USA stuff, like, those guys are dialed in. Like, they're just into it. And it's amazing. and, you know, talking to Nick and some of those guys, like, how do you create that culture? Yeah, you could have 10 Cody Kessels who are just into it because they're Cody Kessel and they just love volleyball. Then that would be great. No work needed. But you're going to have some guys that take a little more cajoling and pulling. How do you do it? I remember talking to McCray, and he said when Tyler Hildebrand was there a couple of years before that, they wanted to make defensive pursuit cool. They want to make that like really cool. And a guy, ball was dug far off, a guy peeled off, chased it down, dove, couldn't get it, but just dove after it. And they started a slow clap. And it was like, and then they all started clapping. All of a sudden, pursuit, crazy pursuit after a ball there's no way you could get, became really cool. And then that was the culture in the gym. And like, I'm just really impressed with that, certainly that gym and that staff and what they've done. And conversely, yeah, you go to JO's and you see, I mean, I was at JO's a couple of years ago and I'm watching a kid, he's in row 1 and he's a setter and he's in row 1, he's waiting for the whistle to be blown. And you don't know what precedes it, but he turns to the sideline where clearly his parents are and he goes, "Mom, I know." And it's like, okay, maybe not the right dynamic or what's going on. Or you see kids, the way they use their arms to their teammates and stuff. So, you know, culture is not an easy thing. It takes time and it takes work and it's fragile. It's as good as the guys you have in it. It takes a lot of courage for the upperclassmen and underclassmen to stand up for what they believe in. And it's I'm sure Cody's seen on his different professional teams how powerful great culture can be. I mean, I'm a fan of Cody Kessel. I watch all of his Instagram stuff, and it just looks like his joy and his love for that game is shared with a lot of guys on that team. You can see the passion and the energy and the love, and that's a pretty special thing.
Yeah, Cody, I'll pass it to you. Same ideas. You know, how do you know that vibe is right? What are you looking for? What things do you perceive or see right away as you walk in a great place, or on the contrary, maybe not a great place?
Yeah, I alluded a little bit to it last time, so if I kind of repeat myself a little bit, but I truly do believe in this stuff where it's kind of those basic human needs. Do I belong? Am I safe? And are the people around me, the third level of that, maybe it's like, are the people around me committed to excellence and improvement? You can kind of constantly ask those questions. And so there's just, you know, the really book I loved about this was Dan Coyle's The Culture Code, if you're looking to kind of dig into this. And there's just a top-down change in a human being when someone turns towards them as opposed to, you know, a shoulder away, or just that's the simplest of human connections. You know, it's cultural thing in Germany and Russia to, you come into a room, say hello to everyone and give them, you know, eye contact, give them a moment, say hi, good to see you, how are you doing? This is something we did at Princeton actually. At practice, you had to check in, you had to give a fist bump to coach, and it's a small little thing, but it's a physical connection. And in that little, coach probably is now, after having done it for so many years, can tell if a guy's had a bad day or not based on the, you know, how you give a fist bump. So that's that simple check-in of, hey, how are you doing? Do they care about me? And is it safe? I mean, the safety thing that can come from, in the professional scene, you see it a lot of people aren't sure, like if the management is really stressing them out, if all these other things that you get to on the professional side of, oh, my career and my job and something else might not be safe. Sometimes that can really lead to a lot of anxiety and performance issues. And so the management side of in the college game, you know, the coach has got to be the manager and the coach and all these things to kind of take care of those basic human needs that everyone has. Yeah, did that get to your question a bit? I mean, those are
I agree. No, you're right on there. I agree. If you're not secure and safe and you know, feel that confidence of the people around you, and you just feed off that positive energy, I fully agree. So now,
and there's just really quick, one last thing to add, and it's a John Kesselism, but it's especially for the youth players there, it's the players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's a lot of truth about sport and whatever you're teaching them, you know, just for any teacher or parent or coach. So, you know, that's a lot of times that has to come first.
So not to infringe on copyright laws, but Cody, I'd recommend you just call it Kesselism, and then people, you know, it is what it is, and they think it's yours, then that's,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, there you go. Kessel, a family.
I've heard a couple of these before. So pivoting a little bit, Sam, you had a really cool run, and Cody, you guys were a part of this in 2019. You had a nice run with Norseca, where you had a great win against Mexico in the semifinals, and then you had an awesome match against Cuba. Came up a little short there in the finals, but I'll start with Sam again. Anything about that experience, the culture of that team, and just the highlights of that going through that program.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start by saying, obviously, having Coach Cody, watching him as this kind of kid in high school, and then come to Princeton and really transform the program from where we were. Not to leave out Soroki and Ensbury and all the other guys that were in his class, the Doobie that did that, but led the charge on this transformative change. And then and I coached him. We were talking about the first year after your freshman year, we went to play in the Asian Pacific Cup, and he got some international experience there. But then just to watch his professional growth, and then me also get to sort of also work up the ranks, coach the youth and junior national team, and then all of a sudden we meet back on the senior national team. And so that was I was beyond tickled to like get a call and say, hey, do you want to coach be an assistant with the senior national team? Who's on their team? Oh, Cody Kessel and George Human, another Princeton Tiger. So yeah, I mean, the three of us went to dinner the first night I got there, and I just couldn't stop grinning and taking pictures of them. And they were like, all right, it's great. It's really great, but we got to eat and we got to go to bed. And so from the start, that was pretty unbelievable for me to get to see two Princeton Tigers on the national team and be a part of that. Culture-wise, it starts from the top down, and John Speraw does an incredible job, wearing two hats, obviously, but when the culture that he's created and has going with USA Volleyball is pretty impressive. And guys like, Anderson and Soji and all those names, like they sort of set the standard of where it is. So no matter what program you're with, and that was my first experience really traveling. I'd been in the gym before. You could kind of feel that energy. And then John Hawks was the assistant coach, is the assistant coach at UCLA, was the head coach for that program, and just carried that on, kind of knowing obviously the UCLA mantra and the way they do things. The culture I thought was dynamite. Joaquin Acosta was the other assistant who was just unbelievable, All-American at BYU. And so I think from the beginning it was like a pretty comfortable environment to be a part of and to step into. And as an assistant in those roles, I try to be very aware of what my role is. You're usually not coming as an assistant to change the culture. You got to add, what can I add? And so add a drill here or there, or an idea there, do a lot of stats and film and stuff. And then just, connect with the guys and try to be, an ear for them. But I had an absolute blast being there with those guys, and it was a lot of fun. And I'd love to do it again.
Awesome. So yeah, Cody, along the same line. So what can you tell me of that experience? And then going forward, what is your plan with, what are you looking for to get out of the national team training experience for 2020/21 now? How are things in the mix right now for that going forward? And, kind of what's in the mix for, the national team as far as, from your perspective?
Yeah, from my perspective, personally, I'm still a little bit of a late bloomer even. I played opposite at Princeton, and to continue my professional and Team USA career, I made the switch to outside hitter. And to be at that level, you have to be an absolutely master level receiver, and all these skills, or all the skills, especially you have to have, for the national team, you got to bring 2 or 3 just super strengths, and the rest, still be a complete volleyball player. So I'm still on the path, even though I'm 28 now, of becoming the best player I can be, and been able to do that after Princeton to continue my career as some aren't able to. So really lucky for that, but I'm still just trying to become the best I can be. And the national team experiences have been awesome for that. You just get like Coach was saying, with the culture and the coaches and the other guys that you're around, it just feeds. It's just the perfect environment to be in to feed that journey. As far as the national, everything's up in the air right now, with not just the U.S. national team, but with around the world with the COVID situation. And so even the FIVB is, these are all, just to say that it's all up in the air. I can throw some rumors and stuff out there that's saying that FIB is trying to push the VNL for 2021 a little bit earlier, so maybe into April. So that's going to change professional club seasons overseas, and the national team is definitely not able to do the same amount of programming and even hold the same amount of players. And of course, there's no one in the gym right now. And if they do move forward later in the summer, it'll probably be with a very trimmed down amount of players, just that Olympic and alternate roster. So that's kind of how it stands right now.
No, I understand that definitely. I mean, it's got to be it's a major change for everybody. I'm sure everybody's trying to figure out alternative plans. How do we plan for a year we didn't know we were going to have? When can we get players in and out of the gym? When can we even get in the gym again? So, Sam, I don't know if you have any perspective on your side. What is is there a national team plan right now that you're allowed to tell us, or is it kind of everything's up in the air and we're taking it day by day?
Yeah, I am not at the top of the totem pole, so I don't know. I know my assistant Pat Schwarn at Princeton was the assistant coach for the junior national team, and they were supposed to have a bunch of. They're supposed to, I think, host in Colorado Springs. I think in August they're supposed to host the junior under 19 or under 21 championship, which hasn't been canceled yet. They're waiting to see what's going to happen, obviously, and it's just kind of a waiting game. I know I was on a call with Sproul the other day, and he was just saying, like, he doesn't know obviously the future, but he knows that the Olympics is a big deal and an opportunity to. I mean, you see it after our history with world wars and stuff. A chance to have an Olympics, have a games that connects countries, that you represent your country. I think is something that everyone is going to try to do, and that's probably going to be one of the things that a lot of resources go towards. I know you talk about JOs. JOs is kind of a public health nightmare of how would you have all these kids and parents in a room and stuff. You look at some of the national team experiences, obviously you have to have the clearance from the governors and the, public safety, but there is a possible route, right? To have 12 guys tested, to have people to have it much more, no fans there, it's possible that could happen in a shorter time frame than say a JOs or a massive HP kind of event. But I don't have any actual information. That's speculation and optimism and trying to be hopeful and have contingency plans prepared as we wait and see what happens.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you're almost even seeing over the last couple of days, actually just this week, you're seeing a major, grassroots movement with a lot of organizations really coming out in support for collegiate sports, saying, hey, whoa, don't cut budgets just yet. Let's hold the phone here. Let's talk about this. And you're definitely starting to see a lot of, words and phrasing and, people looking at their budgets a little closer than just going, let's get rid of everything. Definitely a lot of chatter on that. But yeah, Bill, along that same lines, where can Jiva, help the boys in this regard? What's next for Jiva boys? How can we promote, a healthier Jiva boys culture in just our region with people like Sam and with Cody, and kind of your perspective on the overall?
A couple of things. First, let me tell a little story.
Sure.
I actually, my connection here is that I think it was 93, a friend of mine was buying a boat. And he asked me if I go help him pick up the boat. And I said, sure. So I went and I paid. It turns out he was buying the boat from a guy named Bob McCarthy. And Bob McCarthy and I started chatting. And I told him what I was doing. He told me what he was doing. And he invited me to his gym. And then for a few years, I was an assistant for the men at Vassar. There's a guy on the team called named John Chasey, who also happened to have a cousin named John Kessel. And so at some point I met John, and at some point we started working together, and trust me, he's been my mentor for a lot of years, 30 years. So the idea is that when I walked into McCarthy's gym, there was some chaotic stuff. There was some stuff that was okay. There was some stuff that was not okay. But there was at some point in that mentorship, if you will, I realized there was a place for culture. And my question, well, I'm going to ask these guys after I'm done answering your question. But the question I want you guys to think about is, where was it that you decided, oh, this culture stuff counts? When were you, as an athlete, as a coach, or whatever, when was the point at which you decided this culture stuff counts? Now, as far as how do we get this stuff spread out to Jiva, I think exactly what we're doing now, and I think we continue it. I think we we bother Sam a couple of times a year. We bother John a couple of times a year. We bother Cody a couple of times a year, and we just keep preaching it and giving people the opportunity to understand how important it really is. And it's not just important in the men's game. I mean, we need to do that, but it's important overall. I remember a guy named Bill Neville saying that, talking about every guy he ever coached thought he was better than he was, and no girl he ever coached thought they were as good as they were. And it's true. And so it's different edges of the culture, but I think it needs to be presented completely. And I think that's how we do it. I think we just keep going after the stuff. I think we free up the people that we have they're kind of, for lack of a term, gurus in our region, the Merlin Thompsons of the world, to get them in the gym, to get them in the boys' gym and watching the boys and talking to the boys' coaches and, making them understand how important that stuff is. We do it with the girls. We do it with the girls' coaches. We take, I've mentored, we've chastised and mentored lots of girls coaches over the years, but I don't think we have that connection with the boys, and I think we need to establish that. So,
fair enough. So getting along to Bill's question for Sam and Cody, do you remember when culture truly became important for you, where you had that aha moment?
Well, I wanted to circle back to, and I'll answer it, but something that Bill just mentioned, and I think when you have an opportunity potentially in the Jiva region, I think when you have any kind of organization like we have it at Princeton, when you have a guys and a girls team, I would encourage you to do co-ed events, because I think especially when it's circling back to healthy masculinity, men live in a world with women. And so I think sometimes toxic masculinity happens when it's a bunch of young boys by themselves in a locker room with no coach to say, that's not actually how it works. And so I think back to, like, I did a future select camp in Colorado Springs in 2011. Like, TJ DeFalco was like 11 years old, and there was a bunch of big guys that would go on from there. But we took all the guys, we lined them up from shortest to tallest, and we took all the girls. Who was it? Was it Rob Wild? Some really high profile coach was doing with the girls. He said, "This is a great idea." We took all the girls from tallest to shortest, and we matched up the shortest guy with the tallest girl and vice versa. And we played co-ed back row doubles, waving over 4 nets. And it was a blast. It was an absolute blast. And you could see the parents in the stands, oh, I'm not sure if this is a good idea. And then, like, a girl blocked a guy and someone else dug a ball. It was just such a cool exchange. And I just think there's an opportunity to teach some of these socialization moments by mixing up our sport. Our sport is fun. One of the highlight videos that Cody Kessel sent me in his gap year was a co-ed clip, which I didn't notice at first because I was like, wait, his feet are over the net? I'm definitely taking this kid. So I just think there's an opportunity there, because I think Jiva, especially leading up to HP, which is sort of the pinnacle, it's another thing that made Empire so great and HP so beautiful, is you've got guys and girls in the same room rooting for each other. They're going to the Jiva region, they're going to watch Jiva play Iroquois or wherever else, and that's pretty exciting. So I would encourage you guys, and with that, Bill, you may find opportunities for mentorship across coaches. I know Brad Keller's a good friend of mine. He was assistant on the men's side with UCLA for many years, and then went to UCLA women's. Now he's the head coach of USC women's. But he spent some time at HP on the women's benches because he was trying to get into women's coaching, and he learned a lot about how that worked, and they learned a lot from him from the men's side. So I think there's a lot of cross-pollination that can from a learning perspective, that can be really helpful. As far as when did it click for me that culture is important, and I'm curious. Cody obviously has coached some, but the breadth of his knowledge is as a player. I don't know how much I realized it as a player that I had that much of an impact in the culture. Like, I remember as a player, you walked in, the culture was there. Like, I remember I showed up, I was feet on the line, did my thing, but kind of the culture I was in or the players around me was going to be, until I was a senior and I felt sort of more apt to change the culture. But as a coach, 2010, my first year at Princeton, we were in the finals against Penn State of the IVA. We had a good year. And there was some culture stuff that I didn't want to mess with because things was going well. And in 2011, we had one of our best players had to take a year off, and another best players was out with a shoulder injury, and the talent was down. and the talent was down and the culture was bad. And it was like, okay, if we're not going to be good, we're going to be good with culture. And we started putting into place. And by the time Cody got there, his 2012 as a freshman, I'm sure when he walked in, it was like pretty strict and pretty clean on like, this is the cultural expectations, and that's going to supersede everything. And I talk about like them building the program. We kind of grew up together, right? It was the class before him that was my first recruiting class. And once you saw like a culture in place and guys that came in and bought into it, that was the recipe. And it realized that, because everyone's competitive and you want to win, but winning is, it can be a dangerous elixir. And if you're not really steadfast on your morals and your principles, and that's going to guide you, it's tough when you have some great decisions to make, and you got to look back and say, here's my philosophy. I wrote it down. CAP taught me that on my first CAP course. Write down your philosophy, have it in front of you. I'm sure maybe handed Cody one as a recruit, and I think that's really important for young and old coaches alike to kind of reconfirm their philosophy, because maybe it changes as you get older, but that's what you stick to in tough decisions. And I think that's when I realized that, and I still go back to that to try to hold on to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, Cody, winning, can mask a lot of culture issues. And when winning stops, as Sam said, you kind of get to those tough decisions, but they're not tough if you stick to your values and your culture and the principles and the philosophy you set up. So did you have your, this stuff matters moment that you can recall?
Yeah, as a player, my first aha moment with that was just through the doubles game, just as simple as a single relationship. How it can how your quality of play as a team of two can change based on how you interact with one another, how much you trust each other, the kind of work you put in. And then you get to 6-ons, you have a team of 12, that's 144, 130 plus relationships individually. And so one person can sour a lot of those relationships or strengthen a lot of those relationships. I mean, you get staff involved in a college program, all of a sudden you've got 20 people involved, and you've got, what we started to call the team around the team at Princeton. And you got 25, 30 people, the bus driver, who called into our Zoom call the other day. These people that when you can make these, when relationships matter and people are communicating well and treating each other with respect and showing each other in small ways that they care about each other, it just build up over time, and you get this incredibly strong and powerful web where people are contributing, and that's where you can get really awesome change, also on the court, but off the court too. From the professional side, okay, when you're winning all the time, maybe it's, you say it masks it, but I think there's a lot of teams that are kind of in the middle of their leagues, let's say, or at the bottom. And I was on a team like that in Germany where, the budget and everything. And this is in the professional side, they're picking the people, they're literally choosing, similar to recruiting, you're choosing the people you want to be around. And the Lüneburg team, that to me still had one of the strongest cultures that I've ever been around, the coach made it a priority to choose good people, because he knew that one person, depending on the way that they treated the other 12, 13, 14, 15 people, was gonna, you're not going to go undefeated if you're that kind of team. You kind of know that going in. You're going to go through hard times. There's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a tough journey. How are these people going to react when that tough time comes? And even if you're an undefeated championship level team, whatever, you're winning all the time, there's going to be adversity. So how do your players react when that adversity comes? Bill mentioned the classic story of, in Russia, they probably have 200 players of the quality that could play on the national team. They say, how do they pick the players that make that final 12? And I think this is a Nevilism, but I guess says, actually, we pick the players that respond to failure the best. So that's all built in there too. Again, just what kind of person are you? What are you going to do when you face adversity, and how can you teach that and develop that and grow that?
Cool. No, I thank you. So I think you made up your own, maybe Kesselism there. Relationships matter. We should get t-shirts that say that. I think that's a big phrase. And that kind of goes to one of the other things we've talked about in the past, Sam, of, relationships matter. What's important in a relationship is, proper communication. So, how do, Sam, I know you're, very big on communication, very big on understanding sphere of influence and, what I can control, what my coach can control, not worrying about the things that I can't do anything about. So how does communication, sphere of influence kind of work into your coaching philosophy?
Yeah, I think you're as good as the communication tool is going to work for you, right? And that's sort of with the players that you have. And so, like, I tried over the years to try to connect with them on as many different ways as I can. So Cody mentioned when they come to practice, we do that initial fist bump, eye contact, and how you doing? Oh, I'm good. Good to see you. Okay. The guy that takes a while or doesn't come over, he's a guy that I'm thinking about. I wonder if he's okay. At the end of practice, I go around the circle, give each guy a fist bump, eye contact. And, maybe Cody is a really important person on our team, and I'm going to spend 2 minutes saying, hey, look, I thought you did this well passing, got to try. A lot of information for him. Also checking in with him, but he's one of my star players. But I go around the circle and everyone gets a quick minute. And if you're not doing well, that's another chance for me to kind of connect with you. We do something at Princeton called Reflections, where after the weekend, guys will send me an email. And it's actually started before Cody got there. We did surveys. One of my buddies was a assistant coach with the Brazilian junior national team, and he was doing these surveys after each match. Guys would fill out, this is why we won because of defense blocking or this. We lost because of this, this, and this. And he'd get a printout and say 80% of the guys thought we lost because of defense and we should focus on defense this week. And so it was a great sort of metric heading into the week. I did it for the first semester or first year at Princeton, and the feedback from the guys was, it's a lot. We're Princeton students. There's a lot going on. I mean, you can tell from Cody's a professional athlete, but that factorial he pulled out pretty quick. The math there was pretty impressive. So you can see how much the Princeton education does. But they said it's a lot for me, and can we do something shorter, more condensed? So I changed it to, just send me a quick email. Let me know your thoughts. And it was interesting because a lot of the guys who were starting, they sent feedback, and it was interesting. But I experienced the game in a similar way that they did. It was some of the guys on the bench would start sending me really interesting insights that I didn't see. And some of the stuff Cody talked about, the relationships between a starter and a non-starter and a non-starter, guys battling for positions, different things. And all of a sudden it opened up an opportunity to connect with each guy. So my Monday is spent responding to 12, 14, 16, 18 emails. And I think the tool can be used really well. It also can be dangerous. There was a time when we did reply all with some of the reflections, and there was a phase where we were sending out video clips, and it was like, hey, what would you do differently here? How would you, and give advice to someone in your position. So Cody would get on and say, hey, other opposites or pin hitters, I didn't do this well here. You could do this well there. And it was great. And for like the fall, the reply all was going great. And then we hit a skid and we lost a match, and reply all went sideways, and the tone over email and a group email Cody's smiling because he knows how the story ends. We're not going to go into it now. So I just think you need to be constantly thinking about how you're communicating and how much of it is helping you figure out. Like I try to tell the guys, you work for me and I work for you. And it's a really interesting, it's sort of like public servant of service. Like if you're a mayor, governor, president, whatever, you get elected to work there, you serve those people. Your job is, my job for Cody was to create the best environment for him to become the best player he could be. And in that sense, I worked for him. So when he had drill ideas or he had things that weren't working or working for him, and he came to me, it was my job to make those things work. He also works for me in the sense that if I said you're going to show up at this time and you're going to wear a tie on the road and you're going to do these things to be part of that program, he had to say, yes, coach, I'm in for that. So it's a really interesting dynamic of duality, of symbiosis, of you work for me and I work for you. And I think that has to constantly be fleshed out through multiple communication. Charlie Wade, a coach at Hawaii that Cody and I worked with, and we both coached Cody on that Hawaiian trip, is a tremendous coach and having tremendous success. And I call him from time to time to pick his brain. And the biggest thing he told me about culture is he meets with every one of his guys every other week. So the guys come in every week, and the 1 week they meet with an assistant, 1 week they meet with him. And every 2 weeks he's talking each 15, 20 minutes, takes up a lot of time. He's got 20 something guys on his roster. But sometimes after practice, something happened. You could feel the energy. You weren't able to talk about it. He does that in the one-on-one meeting. So I think communication is a huge thing, because that's the only way you're going to know what's going on with the people you're trying to serve, and how you're going to serve them best.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. So Cody, along the same line, so Sam mentioned, and I've seen a lot of great coaches do this, just taking that 1 or 2 minutes, at the beginning of practice, while you're warming up, while you're stretching, and checking in for players is a really big thing that he uses, and all the other communication tools. But I've seen other gyms where you get a coaching staff that only goes over and talks to 1 or 2 players. do you notice that stuff, from a player side, the coach that checks in with everybody and really checks in and asks how you're doing, how your family is, versus, the coach that's only going to the quote unquote top players per se?
Yeah, you're totally going to notice that. I think even younger kids, pick up on and perceive more than we realize. So again, it just goes back to, does he care? You're constantly, there are coaches, kids, and university players and on up are just constantly asking themselves, does this person care about me? How do they show it? Why should I learn from? Of course, they're a good kid. They're going to come in. They're going to learn from you. But yeah, it's just something to reflect on and see how you can build it into your gym maybe in a better way or a more structured way, or just check in and see how that's going.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that Sam mentioned I thought was really cool is you get a lot of coaches that ask for feedback, whether it be a reflection journal, an email, a text message, and you get all this player feedback. But then on the other side, you get a lot of coaches that don't give feedback in return, or not that same quantity or quality. Cody, did you find it very beneficial that Sam and other great coaches took the time to give you just as much as you gave them? And have you had it the other case around too? And then what happens to the quality of your feedback from you as a player if that happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think you lined it up perfectly there. I mean, if you when you don't have that communication channel going both ways, there's going to be some kind of a breakdown. And again, it can be really, really simple stuff that bolsters those communication channels. It's meetings, emails, fist bumps, short check-ins. The coach, I mean, personally, coach was always super open to my feedback. I remember we always would have there was a drill he loved in particular that I just thought was a massive waste of time. And we'd banter on it back and forth throughout all 4 years. And, by senior year, luckily we were doing it less and less, but he'd still throw it in there every now and then. But just to know that channel was open and that he was hearing the feedback. And even though it was his drill that he loved maybe more than anything, because he had created it, he was open to change, just as you're asking your athletes to be. So that was just a short anecdote there.
So I'll tell you that the folklore of this now has grown so big that Cody Kessel is a big deal in our program, obviously, and the sort of dislike for that drill has become so pervasive in Princeton volleyball history that when I ask for feedback every year, like, hey, what do you guys like or not like, it's just the stock answer is we don't like that drill. But some years we haven't even done the drill. And I'll say, like, we didn't do that drill. And they're like, yeah, but we heard the upperclassmen told us to say that because that's just what you say to kind of grind a coach a little bit. But I will say, in terms of like it's not often you have John Kessel's son in your gym, right? It's not often you have a kid that usually, like, the kid is like trying to get there from engineering class and they're getting there and they're playing and they're going back and they're studying, whatever. Not often you have a kid like studying volleyball and having all these, coming in like that. So we had a lot of great conversations. And there were times when he gave me ideas or gave me things that were even or neutral, or maybe I thought they were maybe like basically the same, maybe even a hair less, but doing them showed so much buy-in to him. And it's sort of like I make it analogous to if you're raising a toddler and you really want them to eat their vegetables and they hate broccoli and they hate Brussels sprouts and they hate carrots, but they'll eat peas. You're like, all right, eat peas, great. Like that's cool, And so it's like, if this is going to make, you have to reward that kind of programmatic buy-in. Like if you have a university student that's that into volleyball, okay, sure, then we'll do that, because that's the important thing. Like I spent half my time with other kids saying, hey, over here, pay attention. We got to watch film. We got to stay dialed in. And this kid is so dialed in, man, you got to give some sugar back to elicit the cyclical nature of that, so that they keep thinking about drills. And I can't tell you the number of ideas and drills and things that I grew from Cody challenging. But it comes back to a healthy relationship where I gave him the freedom to to challenge things. But then on the things where he challenged, I said, I heard you, but we're doing this. He would, oh, yes, coach, let's go. And I do think, and maybe this is more so with like college athletes, or I'm assuming professional athletes than younger boys. It's a dangerous road to go down. You know, asking for a lot of feedback can be seen as weakness through the wrong mindset. You know, and I've definitely seen guys look back at me and say, "Do you not know what you're doing?" Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm asking you, what would you like to do? What do you think? And if you give me some good ideas, well, now we can use them. And you're sort of tricked into thinking they were your ideas, or there are ideas. But it's not an easy thing. It's a much harder way to coach. And so and I think for me in the beginning, and even now when I went down this road, it was like, oh, that makes more sense to me than the autocratic, like you must do it this way, authoritarian. But it's difficult and it takes work. It takes a lot of communication. If you're going to come in and bark orders and make guys do sprints and yell out a drill and leave, it doesn't take a lot of nuance. But if you're going to go down this road, be ready for some work and hope to God you've got a Cody Kessel in your gym.
Very good. Cool. Yeah, no doubt. You know, being a coach, taking risks, being comfortable to take risks. You know, I definitely understand fully. So I'm going to phrase this next question as best I can. So you have this idea of feedback. Do you have what I'll call, for lack of a better term, a feedback sandwich, a delivery formula of feedback that you give? Do you think about your delivery in any way, shape, or form in that? And then along with that, you know, you get all this feedback from players and reflections from players. How do you use that information to fuel them, to push them, to not push them one day or push them the next day, you know, in a positive way, or perhaps in what we traditionally call a negative way? And when do you do both? You know, use the honey or use the stick? And is that something we even do nowadays, or are there other ways to go about it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'll tell you one of the things that, and sometimes I mix up Cody and John about who taught me this, but I think it was Cody. But one of the things that I got from Cody was trying to coach forward, which is not always possible. You know, like when a guy hits a ball on the block or makes an error, the impulse is to say, you did this, your elbow was low, you tried this. And sometimes we try guided discovery. Hey, what did you see? But sometimes there's not time. You know, can you coach forward? Can you let him have that error? Wait till he does it correctly and say, yeah, that was it. Your elbow was high. That was awesome. That in an ivory tower, in an ideal world, is the best way, because you catch him doing it right. You yell across the gym the positive. You whisper that, hey, remember, you got to keep your feet. But there's times in the gym when that's not always possible. It's kind of finding that balance of how often can you catch them doing it right, coaching forward, and how often sometimes you have to say, like, hey, it's the third time in a row, you're not moving your feet. I need you to, you're going to be more successful if you do this, you know? I find a lot of times if I can get one athlete in the gym to do it correctly, coaching through peer is really positive. Like, okay, Tony Ensbury has his arms away from his body. He's got the right technique. He's passing perfectly. Everybody look at this. Let's try to emulate. This is what we want. As opposed to looking at 6 different ways that's wrong. Let's all put our thumbs together, wrist down, and really emulate this. Carrot and stick is a really great question. I try to ask them, and I'm sure Cody and I sat and asked, do you want more carrot or honey? You called it honey and stick. Like, what do you want me to say? Hey, you can do it, or hey, you're not doing it. And I think it's important to have the athletes think about that. Most athletes are going to come to you and say, well, this is how I was coached, what I'm used to. It's like, well, I'm offering you a range of opportunity. I can be a chameleon. I can change. I can do what's best for you. There was a moment, it might have even been the night that the three of us were in the tower. There was a moment where Cody and a couple other guys said they wanted a tougher me. They wanted a more aggressive, more tougher me. And I said, okay, we'll do it. And I watched a bunch of Scarface and Robert, Al Pacino. I got into character and I came in and you remember the practice, I was just hit it hard. I just kept yelling, hit it hard. I don't care where it goes, hit it hard. And we did it for a week. And I don't know, they said they loved it, but I was exhausted. I was like, I cannot keep this up. This is not going to work for me. And I was like, look, I don't know if you actually like this or you're just trying to see if it's going to run me into the ground, but I can't keep going like this. And so I think it was kind of a dialogue of yes, sometimes a kick in the butt can be helpful if it's laid over this trust underneath. that like, I'm doing this to help you. I'm doing this because I care about you. That's got to be there.
Awesome.
And in some ways, it's got to be asked for. Like, I'm going to be best if you push me. But overall, I really feel like the message I try to get across, certainly lately, and I don't know how Cody felt, it's like, you've got to be your own engine. Like, if you need me to yell at you and that's not going to last when you're a dental hygienist or you're on Wall Street, or even when you're a professional volleyball player. What if you get to this team and it's a great team, but the coach doesn't yell at you and now you can't perform? Like, you've got to be the guy that gets up at 6 a.m. to run sprints. You've got to be the guy that works hard. And I'm there to guide you. But if I'm the one sort of pushing you, that's not sustainable, I think.
Fair enough. So Cody, now's your chance from the player side. Are you looking more for your type of player? This is your assessment on yourself. Do you do better when you get that positive reinforcement? Do you do better? Are you one of those players that thinks they need a little bit of tougher love? Or where's that balance in between? What kind of player are you, or what kind of player do you think you are?
Yeah, it's a age-old question, carrot and the stick kind of thing. But Sam nailed it on the head, I think 100%. It has to eventually come from the player themselves. And so both the carrot and the stick are going to run out. It's unsustainable at some level. And so the truly great players are going to have that internal drive. And even from, an in the gym thing, even if coach is giving me a bunch of attention in a 2-hour practice, that might only be 20 minutes worth of feedback. And that's if I'm a star player. Some guys are going to get 2-3 minutes, and the rest of all that other time, again, another John Kesselism, is going to be, the player's going to be on their own. So how do you find ways to make sure that they're giving themselves feedback and learning and seeing and looking at the right things, and those other, for all those other minutes that they're in the gym or they're not in the gym, what are the loops going on? What are the mental loops? How are they reacting? And just on the kind of the feedback train, just a thought in general is, for training wise, you do need to give a lot of feedback. I mean, maybe this is something where I depart from my dad a little bit, is I think coaches should have, of course, stay true to yourself, but from a motor learning standpoint, the feedback's really important. And summary feedback is one thing. You don't want to, maybe not after every rep. Some guys might like that, but okay, see 10 reps. If they're all one way, okay, hey, give some feedback there, give some feedback there. But that constant adjusting is really important for that loop and the skill development. So, but as coach said, it goes back to as well, like, it's just going to depend on the person and that relationship that you build. So.
Yeah, I would say, I think it's hard to have one answer, because, I think you have to be able to bring the stick out at times. Like, I remember Cody, he watched so much volleyball and he was so enamored with like hitting the ball deep, which you want to hit the ball deep and you want to, but I was like, sometimes you need to bounce it down. Sometimes you need to like hit the ball really hard, just hit as hard as you can and bounce it, which most boys, like, that's all they want to do, and they don't hit deep. And here was this, like, guy way beyond his years trying to hit deep. I was like, you realize you're touching 12 feet. Like, you should hit it down hard. And I remember one practice, he was just like chopping, and I was like, what? You're not Jibo right now. Like, I watched Dante do this. Like, no, just hit it really hard. And I finally just started, I took out the hammer. I was like, hit it as hard as you can. And he busted this poor kid's glasses whenever they. But sometimes you gotta push to find that place, and then it was like, okay, you found it. Now you can use it when you need it,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And through those
I do apologize. We're already at the hour mark, so I do want to try to wrap this up. And we have at least one more topic I do want to discuss, at least a little bit. And I'm going to open this up to Bill Doyle. I think people need to be aware. We have what's known as the high performance program. And the way the high performance pipeline works is you have regional teams and you have national teams, both on the boys and the girls side, that lead up to an Olympic player pipeline. So Bill Doyle, do you want to kind of speak on behalf of where the region is in that? And then maybe Sam and Cody, I'll go with you guys on the national side of that.
Yeah, well, I'll announce now that we're bringing both Sam and Cody. Just kidding. Listen, our program has been pretty darn successful, and we've had that success by having people step up and say, "Gee, what can I learn?" where can I go with this? It's not so much we brought our expertise, although people have brought expertise. It's a matter of being part of the team and part of growing the game. We unfortunately, we don't believe that the high performance championships will happen this year. But we're also very cognizant of the fact that it was just dangerous for us to do it, to have the tryouts in May, and we just didn't want to go with video tryouts like the national team is doing. I'm sure it's better with them, but we have decided to cancel it for this year. But we'll be back, and we really want the boys to listen and to understand culture, if you will, and understand that they can get that opportunity in our program, in the program we offer.
Awesome.
I think it's important. I think it's important for coaches. And I will just quickly, John, I'm going to jump off the question a little bit and talk to the coaches that are out there that are listening, especially the boys coaches that are out there listening, but also the girls coaches. You're going to have a culture in your gym. Cody talked about this last week. We've talked about it a lot. You're going to have a culture in your gym. What that culture is depends a lot upon you. And as a person, you have an influence. Your influence is never, and it's never neutral. So you need to work at what kind of culture you want in your gym, who the person you are and what kind of culture that is, and what culture works for the people that you're working with. It's just, I think that sounds simple, and it's not. It really takes a lot of work and a lot of consideration and a lot of thought. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't show up. Culture doesn't come into your gym like somebody's mom asking you if their daughter can play volleyball. Culture is established, and it takes a lot of thought and a lot of work. And if you take, if you look at just a few things comparatively that Sam's getting to talk about today and Cody's getting to talk about today, if this is an hour's worth and you got this much information, imagine if you could hang out with one of those guys for a year. How much there really is to learn. I work at it all the time. I learn stuff today. I hope you learn stuff today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people should realize, the Jiva High Performance Program, we have an open application system. We're looking for people to get involved that want to be great coaches. Our practices are all open to anybody. Even if you don't get selected as a coach, you can come to a Jiva High Performance practice and do so and learn from some of the best coaches in the region. We bring coaches in from out of region, and we work hard and we create a great culture in a very short period of time to model that, that national team dynamic as much as we can in that high performance pipeline regard. Sam, along the same line, so, why should a kid get involved in Jiva, regional high performance, national high performance, and what does that lead to down the road?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying, I think, and Cody's watched this, you look at when we go with the youth or junior national team, when we play Italy, France, Spain, Belgium, China, whoever, we're at a disadvantage at the youth and junior level. These other teams, they train more. It's not until we get to the senior team that all of a sudden the college training kicks in, the professional kicks in, we start to match, and now we're in the medal hunt. But another huge reason is because we're playing 14s, 15s, 16s, 17s, and 18s. Kids are segregated into their age bracket to the minute year. Back when I played boys, there was only a 14s, 16s, and 18s. Right now, it's every year. You go out to Europe. If Cody had grown up in Europe, by the time he was a young boy, he would have been playing with 35-year-olds. And so he would have learned how to tool the block. He would have learned high hand. He would have learned all these things with guys his size, as opposed to being big and just hitting hard cross court, which is what young kids learn. So the Jiva opportunity, HP in general, mixes up ages, right? I mean, it's like you're playing, there's only 2 divisions, right? And so if you're going to play in one of those 2, you could be 14 playing with 16, could be 16 playing with 18. That's the education, all of this. And you're going to go and play against the national team teams. So all of a sudden, you're a 16-year-old, you're pretty good from New York City, Long Island, New Jersey, whatever. all of a sudden you get on this team, you're playing with 17 or 18-year-olds. Now you go and you play against the national team, and you see, the first time you see indepth hit this ball behind his back, you're like, wow, I didn't know that could be done. And so just the exposure to playing with older players and then to go to this national tournament, it's just amazing. The energy at HP reminds me of Empire State Games to some degree, but on a larger scale. So I would encourage any kid, if you're into volleyball, if you live in the Jiva region, go try out, go be a part of it. And I think similar to kids too, like coaches, like whether you make the team as a coach or a player, keep showing up. Ask, can you shag balls? Can you be in the gym? Like that is a success. That's a Rudy success story on a lot of levels. If you want to work hard, I know a lot of the folks at Jiva are going to welcome you in as a coach or a player, and they're going to find a spot for you, and you can grow.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, for people that don't realize, the high performance pipeline, in a sense, every region has the opportunity to send a team to this international tournament. And in a sense, it's an all-star team or the best of the best from that region. But then not only that, you have national teams of the best of the best of the best of the region who go and play as well. But not only that, you have any country on the globe, on the map, that can also send a team to this international competition. And it's just a chance to see higher level volleyball, best of 5, which in New Jersey and some places in New York, we don't get to do either, and play by international rules, creating the complete player. So all of a sudden you got kids that are playing back row and they look at you and no, you're not subbing out. We don't have any subs left. And that's a whole nother experience as well. But yeah, Cody, same idea. Why should a kid play high performance from Jiva or from anywhere?
Just for the opportunities and the people you're going to meet. I mean, that's what is going to drive you forward. Why should you play it? Yeah, you love the sport, and it's an awesome way to meet more people, compete around the world, around the country, and represent where you're from. I mean, when I was younger, I took a lot of pride in, maybe making the Colorado region, all Colorado teams. So there's pride in that, and in that community that helped you grow into a player and is teaching you. So yeah, I think the opportunities that Jiva is providing are just awesome for players. So I think take advantage when you can.
Awesome, thank you. So a couple more notes before I give our guests the final words. First thing, Jiva has just posted on the juniors website that we are now giving away 5 different awards for the 2020 season. Those include Boys and Girls Coach of the Year, Club Director of the Year, and there's 2 new awards on there that we have come into conjunction with the ABCA, a Network Coach of the Year and an Innovative Coach of the Year. So we are giving away this year 5 different awards. Those nomination forms can be found on the Jiva Juniors website on jiva.org. The other thing, programming note, next Thursday, we already have it lined up for you. We have 2 coaches from the national sitting team, Michelle Goodall and Elliot Blake. So those will be our guests next week, and we're looking really, really forward to that. I'll give each of our panelists the final word before we sign off. But before I do want to spend a little bit of time thanking our technical director for the program tonight, Aaron LeBand. Aaron, thank you so much for the work behind the scenes that you do. This couldn't be done without you. I truly appreciate it. Sam, final thoughts and words on anything we talked about this evening?
Yeah, the final thought I'll leave everyone with is something that I've been working on, and I think it's helped me in the last couple of years, and I try to do it now more than ever. And that's just focus on gratitude. I think when if that can be part of your culture, if you can sort of show your athletes that you're grateful for the effort and the energy and the things that they put in, I think if you can show your family, I think if in difficult times like this, if you can find what you're grateful for, I think that can be a really sort of powerful thing to lean on. So, and I would encourage people to not be shy, right? Tell the people around you that you're appreciative and grateful for them. So with that, before I sign off, I want to say thank you to you guys and thank you to Jiva for helping me get my start in volleyball. And I want to say thank you to Cody Kessel for being, I won't say my favorite because that wouldn't be fair, but you're my favorite. And I appreciate you and thank you for representing the brand and doing great things in volleyball and making Princeton Volleyball proud. So I appreciate you.
Awesome. Cody, right back at you. It's your turn.
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate you too. I mean, the opportunity to go to Princeton and through volleyball, it's just all these opportunities that can come through volleyball has just changed my life so much for the better. You know, those 4 years was a pretty magical time. So yeah, I appreciate you in the program so much. And Ajiva, John, Bill, Aaron, thank you guys for having us and letting us talk and share some ideas. And if you've gotten through an hour plus of a webinar, you probably are about learning and about getting better. And I mean, I just, it doesn't stop. You know, there's so many, even just on the culture thing, you know, one little thought, you know, I was watching the Michael Jordan documentary, and so, you know, what did Phil Jackson do there? What can you take from that? Or the sport, you know, it's not just volleyball, sport, humans, what, you know, the Dan Coyle book goes into all sorts of different successful cultures. So it's not just volleyball. You can kind of take it from the world around you and find what inspires you and drives you and what you find to be true and what you want to bring to these kids and your teammates and the people around you. And so, yeah, with Sam's got the gratitude and yeah, and just love and joy for the game and, you know, what we get to do and have sport as our kind of drives our lives. Pretty special and awesome. So thank you.
Thank you.
I can give a quick plug. I don't know if people enjoyed listening to Cody or some of the stuff he's referencing, but he has an incredible blog, Cody's Creation, that if you're not following him, if you want to tell him how to follow you, it's pretty great with a lot of time on it.
It's a scattering of just different ideas and stuff. So yeah, if you want to check that out, Cody's Creation, just give me you can just sign up for the newsletter or just random thoughts about life in the world and not just volleyball. So it's fun to, you know, we're not just volleyball people. We're all just pretty cool humans that do a lot of different things. So with that, I'll sign off. Thanks.
Thank you. For those of you who haven't gotten it to yet, Cody's blog is pretty impressive. He's got some very impressive thoughts, so give it a try. Mr. Doyle, Bill Doyle, your last words? Bill, your mic is off.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for doing this. I think it's really a tremendous thing. Cody, you've been here twice, and I'm going to get you again. and Sam, you're not done either. So I think we can continue this, and I think I honestly think that this is probably something we should continue to do no matter what the situation becomes with playing, not playing, those kind of things, because it's just valuable information to put out there for coaches. Pay attention. If you need to, go back and this thing is recorded, right? So you can go back and look at it again and pay attention to the stuff about culture and about team and about building that and being honest to yourself and honest to your team and can grow. I'm still working at it and I'm really old. So
awesome. Great. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. Sam, Cody, Bill, Aaron, and the rest of the Jiva world, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We hope you learned a lot. I know I had a ball, and we look forward to doing this again for you guys. Have a great night, and all of you stay safe, stay home. God bless.
Adios.